Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello dear students, Mr. Khalid is talking. Today we are going to talk about lesson number 4, the history of life on earth. Lesson number 4 in that unit. And we are going to discuss actually what exactly happened in the old time for the earth. What happened to the old time and how the paleontologists and the geologists did found using fossil and fossil record, the two terms that we said before that we are going to use them in that unit. We're going to use them again in that lesson as we said before. Right, okay, let's start. I need you to take a look to this diagram, that photo, to answer or to talk about these two questions. How do we learn about ancient life and what can we learn from fossils? How exactly fossil and fossil records are going to be beneficiary for us? Well, if we want to study that graph and to find the sedimentary rocks here, layers for a sedimentary rock, and it contains a fossil A and fossil B buried down there between the layers, and there is a term here known as MA. As you can see, there are numbers 75, 130, 195, and MA. The word MA means mega annum, and mega annum equal 1 million years. So we are using this unit, measuring unit, when we talk about old ancient time. And okay, for fossil A and B that they are part between this sedimentary rock, what exactly can you deduce using the information of the previous lesson? What exactly can conclude from these two fossils? Well, definitely that fossil buried after that one, so we can say it lived more recently than organism B. And if we are going to use this number, we can deduce that organism A lived in 75 or between 75 and 130 MA or million years. For the paleontologists look for clues to understand what happened in the past. These scientists use fossils to reconstruct the history of life. And a fossil, as we said before, it is a trace or imprint of a living thing that is preserved by geological processes. So if that was the first question, and it leads to the next one, the fossil record. If we are going to collect some information about these two organisms, what can we learn from fossil and fossil record? Well, actually, by examining the fossil record, the scientists can identify when different species lived and died, so we can know the time of living and how they died. And we are going actually to do this by using two ways: the relative dating and absolute dating. For the relative dating, it tells or determines whether a fossil formed before or after another fossil. So it's going to tell you which one was the first. That is the relative dating. But for the absolute dating, it estimates the age of the fossil in years. So in that case, you are going to use numbers. For example, organism A lived between 75 and 130 million years ago, but the organism B lived between 170 and 195 MA. So absolute dating, you are going to tell me about the numbers, the age or the era that the organism were left and died, of course, preserved and died or vitrified between the sedimentary rocks. So for question number 5, what does relative dating tell you about fossil A? Well, simply the answer of the question is going to be that organism A lived more recently than organism B. But question number 6 talks about what does absolute dating tell you about fossil A? Well, simply it lived between 75 and 130 MA or million years ago. That's how you're going to use relative dating and absolute dating. You're going to tell me which one lived first and exactly between which era. The number here, you're going to estimate the age of the fossil in years. Okay, proceed to the next page. You will find here a drawing that explains what exactly happened as a kind of a structural adaptation for a specific organism. Actually, there are 3 animals here, 3 different organisms, and I need you to take a look to that drawing. For example, the question here says what adaptation would have allowed organism to migrate from oceans to land. simply the first organism here, it has in the fins low bones. We can say there is no type of fins, or the type of the adaptation is not used anymore, because actually the living organism already lives in water, so it needs fins to swim. After this kind of structural adaptation is going to occur to the bones of the limb, so the animal is going to proceed to the land, and in that case the animal needs to exactly evaluate or adapt a new type of limb that help the organism to live or move in land. That's why the kind of the structural adaptation here takes place. Actually, the fins in the limb is going to be adapted to the new environment that the organism exists. So back again to the book. The question here says, what changes do you see in the limb structure of these three animals above? Well, simply the answer is going to be the earliest animal has fewer bones at the end of its limb. Over the time, the number of the bones, what is going to happen to this, increased, and the limb became more suitable for what? For land travel, for the organism to live in land. And we are calling this kind of a structural adaptation. I'm not saying that the species did change or evaluate totally. We don't have here another species, it is the same, but we can say kind of adaptation occurs. Okay. Now, when extinctions occurred, we need to know first, what does it mean extinction? When actually extinction, what is happening to the dinosaurs? Well, obvious that there are no more dinosaurs in Earth. They are all died. We can say that they didn't adapt to the new environment due to earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever the circumstances or the conditions that was exist during such era. We can say that it killed them all. They didn't adapt, and an extinction happens when every individual of a species died. Now, there are no more dinosaurs. But what happened with that word, the mass extinction? Well, actually it occurs when a large number of species go extinct, but during a relatively short amount of time. Something like what happened to panda. I'm not saying that the type of the extinction that happened to such organism were determined by paleontologists, but we can say that the animal was in danger, and it reached to extinct little bit by using the mass extinction, that expression, where large number of panda actually were killed. They didn't reproduce and adapt. For that reason, the animal was in danger, and it goes to the extinct. The mass extinct here is explaining when a large number of the species go extinct during relative short amount of time, and the extinction in general when the species does not exist. Question number 8 here, it says, how can the extinction of an organism be inferred from evidence and fossil record? Now we are going to take the word extinction, the expression extinction, and explain what happened to it according to fossil record. To answer this question, let's read the question again. How can extinction of an organism be inferred from evidence in a fossil record? Well, simply the answer is going to be the fossil of the organism are no longer present in the fossil record. We don't have fossil record for such organism. In that case, the extinction for that organism is going to be inferred from the evidence in the fossil record. Okay, let's proceed. These 2 pages, there is a question here, what is the geologic time scale? There's something now in the geologic time scale. Well, simply the paleontologists, they classify or divide the era or the age or the periods for the old earth in a form of a scale. Well, actually in a form of eras from a specific year to another specific year or another specific period. And the geologic time scale, what is it exactly? It is a standard method, it is a way, it is a method used to divide earth is long, for example, for 0.6 billion year natural history into manageable parts. Okay, we are going to put the earth age or eras in a form of a scale. Okay, there is a question here says, underline one reason why it is hard for scientists to study the early history of Earth? Well, simply it is rare. The fossil record in that case, it is rare. They didn't find anything to study. Or we can say they found, but it wasn't enough to make a fossil record for such era. So, to underline that reason, we simply can say the early history of Earth has been poorly understood. Why? Why it was poorly understood? Because fossils from this time span are rare. They didn't find more fossils to study. So the fossil record in that case is leading to no way. Okay. Before answering these two questions, I need you to take a look to this. The Precambrian time, the Hadean Aeon, Archean Aeon, Proterozoic Aeon, and Phanerozoic Aeon. Well, simply each part is going to be divided into form of years, and here we are going to discuss, for example, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic till today. Cenozoic actually contain the era of today, but for the old eras we need to know the names and the beginning and the end of such time. No, sorry for that. Now it starts with Cambrian, Paleozoic era. Start with Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. And we can say that Paleozoic era start with 542 MA and it end in 251 MA. That's the beginning and the end for such era, for Paleozoic. 542 and 251 MA, definitely. The question here says, when did the Paleozoic era begin and end? It began and end in these two numbers, 542, 251 MA, definitely. Precambrian till Permian. Okay. For the next question, it says which three periods make up the Mesozoic era. That's the Mesozoic era, and the three periods here with numbers. It starts with Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. That's actually the three periods that make Mesozoic era. And finally, with Cenozoic era till today, it is, we can say, started from 65.5 MA till 2.6 MA and moving or proceeding till today. That is Cenozoic era. And that diagram actually for the Earth formation explain with a diagram or with a graph the Precambrian time, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, and Cenozoic in a form of a chart or a diagram, the geologic time up until today, which is actually related to Cenozoic era. Okay? Well, a tool to organize Earth's history, that is supposed to be the tool that we are going to use. I don't need you to read every single word here, and I actually need you to know the biggest one, the biggest era, and the era that contains the nature of the Earth today, which is Cenozoic era. Well, a circle graph can be used to what? To illustrate the division of what? Of the geologic time. As you can see above, most of the Earth past is Precambrian time. Today's era, that is the Cenozoic era, makes up just every small percentage of Earth's history. That's it. By the end of that part, dear students, we reach to the end of the part. Actually, the next time or the next part, we're going to talk about the rest of the lesson. See you next time, inshallah.